Answers to fraction questions must be given in the simplest form possible. There are two ways that you do that. One is that you convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. So for example, say somebody tells you that something can be measured and that it's 31/9 of an inch. Well, wait a minute, that's not very easy to understand. Let's convert that improper fraction to a mixed number, and we find that that means 3 4/9. Well, that's simpler. Another way we make things simple is to reduce fractions to their lowest equivalent, and that's called reducing to lowest terms. So for example, say we get an answer to a fractions question that is 48/80. Well, those are pretty big numbers, so what exactly does 48/80 mean? Well, we can reduce that because we know about equivalent fractions. Fractions can be bigger or smaller. So let's make it as small as possible, and we'll find out that 48/80 means the same thing as 3/5, which is a lot easier to understand. So in order to reduce fractions like 48/80, we're going to divide the number on top, the numerator, and the denominator by the same number. And that number is called a common factor, which is a number that divides evenly into both. And in order to find common factors, we're going to use our knowledge of divisibility rules and factoring. So for example, we have our fraction 48/80. Using divisibility rules, we can see that these are both even numbers, and so they both would divide evenly by 2. And we could also see from divisibility rules that 48 and 80 would divide evenly by 4. And then using my knowledge of the times table, I know that 6 times 8 is 48, and 8 times 10 is 80, so they're both divisible by 8. And then if I were to perform factoring of these two numbers, which you might remember from whole numbers, I would discover that both 48 and 80 are divisible by 16. So 2, 4, 8, and 16 are all some common factors of 48 and 80. Here's another example. Say we had the fraction 35/40. We want to see if that could be made easier to understand, so let's look for some common factors. So using the divisibility rules, we can see that one of these numbers ends in 5 and the other ends in 0, which means they are both divisible by 5, and in this case that's going to be the only common factor. Now do be aware that some fractions don't have common factors for the numerator and denominator. So 7/13, for example, if we look at the numerator, the number on top, we can see that 7 is a prime number. It only divides by 1, which doesn't really count because it doesn't change anything, and itself 7. But 13 doesn't divide by 7, so there are no common factors which means it doesn't reduce. It can't be made any smaller.